for probably one last question. The last question we got was actually today. It was probably an hour ago when we checked the Q&A. So hopefully that person is tuning in. The question is that this person's been working on a case with a client for 5 years, and the parents recently asked this person for a more progressive approach. What does that mean? That would be my question: is what does progressive approach mean? Now, the BCBA was amazing. She said, "Hey, well, what are you thinking? Well, what do you mean by that?" And then the parents came back and said, "Well, you're the BCBA on the team, so you should know how to do this." So anyways, the question is that this child is 7 and he's barely talking, but he can talk. He just refuses to use his words across people. So where do you start for a progressive approach? I think that you did a really great job going to the parents and saying, well, what are your goals? What does progressive mean for you, period? I would probably go back to the parents and ask them, great, you bet, let's do a progressive approach, but we need to be partners together on this. Let's look at goals. What are your goals for your child? So I have an ABLES that says, here's the goals that they need to use, but let's look at what your goals are. Where do you see this child in 10 years from now? Where do you see this child in 5 years from now? And then work backwards. So typically we start with, okay, great. Where do we want this kiddo to go? This child has these strengths and these weaknesses. I don't like calling them weaknesses, but these strengths. So let's look at the strengths, and maybe instead of saying, okay, we'll fill in the gaps in terms of, where this child doesn't have the strengths, we'll fill in the gaps. Instead of looking at that, let's look at the strengths and go, wow, kiddo really likes this, or is really, really great at matching, or really, really great at this. How do we build those strengths up into a potential career? And now I'm sure that you're saying, wow, he's 7, stop talking about a potential career. I'm always, always, always looking at that, because what happens is you get somebody who is 20 years old and they can't do this, that, blah, 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 blah. And it really does stem from what their ABA program looks like when they're young.
They've been working on matching for 10 years.
Yeah. Or manding. I mean, manding is really, really important, but at some point in time, you know what? You got to get dressed on your own. You just do. So, have a really honest conversation with the parents and say, I know he's only 7, but where do you see him when he's 20? And seeing if you can get some realistic expectations from parents and saying, okay, they're not going to tell you, I will see him in a group home, severely disabled, and this and that, what have you. They're going to say, I see him living semi-independently. I see him, holding down some type of job, blah, 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 blah. Great. If he's going to be living independently or semi-independently, what skills do we need to teach now at the age of 7 to get him there? So making sure that he can go through, I call it all the nakedness stuff, completely independently. Can he toilet on his own? Can he shower on his own? Can he get dressed on his own? All of that kind of stuff needs to be taught, period. Secondly, like I keep going back to, what are his strengths, right? But what type of job can you see him having? So if he's really good at matching, if he's a really good organizer, maybe he'd be really, really good at stocking shelves. And I know that job, people say that job sucks, but you know what? It's actually really, really amazing to do something like that. I had a learner who was nonverbal, super, super, super great at organizing, loved, like, almost, we talked about the OCD stuff, but almost like to the OCD, she needed this way and this way, blah, blah, blah. We put her at Winners in the shoe department, and she was awesome. She took those shoes and she lined them right up and she went aisle by aisle and did all that. And then guess what? It was like a super busy location that by the time she got to the last aisle, she had to go back to the first aisle and do it all over again. And she loved it. It was like a highlight of her week. Like, she just loved going there. So
the other thing I would think about is, you've been with this client, this family for 5 years, sometimes maybe they're just like feeling burnt out. Like, imagine if, I would feel burnt out with some clients for 5 years. Imagine the parents feeling like, is there an end in sight? Like, what's going on? So sometimes maybe they just need to, like, shake it up, or like do something different. Maybe they're just feeling hopeless. So maybe if you do some more community walks, or try something new, like go to a CEU or learn something new and try, like, a peak assessment, or just make the parents feel like you're not just doing the same thing, which I'm sure you're not doing the same thing for 5 years, but maybe parents just need to see, you put a little life into the program. So see what you can do just on that end. Even if you're going to be working on the same technical skills, maybe they'll just feel like, you're coming in with a fresh perspective, and, I went to this course and I learned this new strategy and we're going to try it. maybe that's all it takes.
Even moving furniture around, it sounds silly, but you look at the same things over and over again. You're like, I really don't love this house anymore. And then you rearrange the furniture and you're like, wow, this is amazing, right? So sometimes even just rearranging the furniture in the therapy room is a good idea as well to switch things up. But obviously more than just rearranging furniture. If the student is verbal and isn't talking but can talk, and you're harping on the same things because he's only getting 50%, maybe you move on. Maybe you say, you know what, I know he's not answering this on an assessment, but I'm going to move on anyways. Or you put in a whole bunch of visual supports to get him there and keep those visual supports in. So I know that when you fade those visual supports, he can't do it some of the time, but some of the time he can. So keep the visual supports in, get him feeling successful, and introduce new programs with more visual supports.
Yeah, sometimes you have to not just look at what the official mastery criteria are, but think about what your students need to be able to move forward in their own lives. Like, if their life wasn't the assessment and they didn't need to master 100 men, in 10 minutes, what can they do, and what can you do to move them to the next step?
Awesome.
Yeah, this was a really great conversation. I loved all the questions, and you can continue to ask questions in the community, in the behavior resource community. There is a topic for Q&A questions, and that's where you can go and post your questions, and we go from there and pick them out for our monthly Q&A. And so we love doing this. We hope it was helpful. Our next CEU webinar is in 2 weeks. I know it's close to the holidays, but cool kidding, where are y'all going? You're going to be here. And the topic is school readiness. Great. So we're going to
right next to the holidays, and right during COVID, we're doing school readiness, but why not?
We're going to be talking about, programming for school readiness, talking about how to create those groups and those goals, what type of students, beginner, intermediate, advanced type of goals, and how to really teach those school readiness skills, which is so important to get our students from that, direct one-to-one teaching to be able to function in group.
Sorry, just typing in the chat to one of our members. You guys, thank you so much. This was really fun. These hours go by like that. Love it. And I get so much energy off you guys too. So welcome, stay safe, and see you guys soon.